Good morning. This is Bill from Audi Europa Naples well, it's time for the emotional weather report. It's Wednesday morning. It's about 76 degrees. It doesn't feel terrible right now, but I know it's on the way. We're going to get another day near 90. It's not going to feel like season. It's not going to feel like fall or winter. It's going to be hot, and I'm going to be hateful. And hopefully that changes next week. The Weather Channel is updating and saying it is going to change next week, but who the hell knows? They always adjust it at the last minute, and if they do, I know it's not going to be adjusted in my favor. So this is potentially another winter that we here in southern Florida are being robbed of, and it's just going to continue with the heat. We're all going to be miserable, and the world will keep going anyway. Anyway, what do I have today? I have this 2005 Mercedes-Benz ML350. This is an SUV. It's 4MATIC or all-wheel drive. It was the first SUV offered. Well, that's not entirely true. It was kind of the first commercial, consumer-level, proper SUV offered by Mercedes. They did have the G-Wagen, which was kind of a, military SUV that was used in action, pretty much nowhere, but it was a neat piece. But that thing was a rugged truck, and this is a less rugged truck. And Mercedes put a lot of thought into this thing. They spent over $1 billion on development. They decided that the North American market was the key to this thing, so they decided to build it in North America. They built a plant in Alabama, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting everything set up. And it worked. The vehicle, of course, was a commercial success. I mean, when it came out, everybody was reviewing it. The reviews were mostly good, but there was some hesitation from some people. But everyone agreed that this particular vehicle was going to be a game changer for Mercedes-Benz and for the entire luxury SUV market, which we'll get into in a minute. Anyway, so the thing comes out in 1998. Some people say it wasn't a crowded field, that there were things like the Oldsmobile Bravado, the Grand Cherokee Limited, a few other bits and pieces that, were in the luxury SUV segment. And Mercedes came out sort of, without any thought that this wouldn't work, and that is not entirely true. I mean, the luxury SUV segment was well established. Cars were selling, but it wasn't a national obsession. And here's where this car becomes a little bit controversial, and why I have a love-hate relationship with it personally. This ushered in the era of the soccer moms driving luxury SUVs. That really wasn't the case before that. I would say before this car, it was mostly the domain of guys who wanted to, have either a rugged image or actually needed it for rugged duty. After this thing came out, there wasn't a soccer mom on the planet who wouldn't have been ashamed to not drive an SUV. The pressure became unbelievable, and that is why I kind of dislike this thing. I mean, it set women completely off the deep end. My sister, for instance, I mean, you show her a minivan and she recoils in horror like Dracula from Sunlight. I mean, she just can't do it. She needs to look like a wildlife photographer. Absolutely needs to. And I tell her that it's not really, about the vehicle. I mean, a married woman can have an extramarital affair if they drive a minivan, as long as they look after themselves and look good. I mean, the SUV really doesn't add any attraction to them. But God help me, I can't get that point across, and I'm sure she believes that in order to be hot, she has to continue driving some kind of ridiculous school bus with leather and off-road lights. But anyway, this is the W163. It was designed all through the Clinton era, starting in, 91, 92 on the drawing boards. It came out in 97 in Europe and 98 in the United States, and was an instant sales success. It also came out during the era when Mercedes-Benz was sort of, for want of a better word, they were cheapening their cars. They were morphing their company from being a purveyor of boxy, over-engineered, extra expensive vehicles into something more like an upmarket Volkswagen. Jesus, I'm tripping over Jeeps here. and they had succeeded, and this car was one of the pinnacles of that effort. The entry price was pretty cheap, all things considered, about 35 grand to begin with, and of course as you added options and such, it went up from there. But as such, it did compete with vehicles like the Ford Explorer, the Range Rover Discovery, the Grand Cherokee Limited, and did so very, very well. They sold a ton of these things, and very, very quickly almost every other car company followed suit. Audi, BMW, they all came out with their own SUVs. Volvo freaked out. They lifted the all-road wagon, that was Audi that lifted the all-road wagon in an attempt to stave people off till they could make it SUV. And of course Volvo did the same thing with the cross-country. So it ushered in this era of insanity to me in American suburbia, where people just had to have these things. Now Mercedes, when they built it, decided that they wanted it to be a true SUV because that was the market at the time. Everything that was coming out then was kind of full frame, rugged, truck-like. And this is no different. This uses a body-on-frame platform, which is quite rare for Mercedes, and certainly they quickly left that. The next generation ML became a unibody like everything else. But that's what makes this thing a little bit unique to me, is it is a genuine truck. You've got your body on frame. It did use all independent suspension, which was quite new in a full-frame vehicle. It had a host of safety features and suspension features that separated it from the rest. Independent suspension, traction control, brake assist, all sorts of things that helped it be a more durable piece. And here's where I like this vehicle, is I've known them very well over the years. I mean, these things have come in and out of my life a ton. This is the best preserved one I've seen in a long time, because most of them have been beat to shit by, second, third, fourth owners. This thing hasn't, which makes it kind of cool. But anyway, they are durable. I mean, I've known guys who have put 300,000+ miles on these things the way they came. Original engine, transfer case, all that stuff. I've heard other horror stories, but that's the case with any car. But for the most part, it is an incredibly durable platform, and that's why I like it. I mean, it's something that you can pick up cheap, it's well engineered, and you can drive the hell out of it, and it's going to keep going for a long time. So there it is. That's a plus in my book. The minus, of course, is where it made all the women go completely insane. This being in 05 was the final year of this. It became the ML350. I want to say in 02 when they bumped up the horsepower and did a facelift on the car. The 98 models here in the United States, mixed reviews. The fit and finish, the body fits, the trim quality, all came under fire for not being up to traditional Mercedes standards. When 02 rolled around and they did this facelift version, they tried to address that with some degree of success. They added these little power bulges in the hood, they changed the headlights, they changed the front and rear bumpers, they added running boards. They made it look a little bit better. The turn signals went from the fender into the mirror. These running boards on this thing, it's kind of hilarious. It was a nice move. It did improve things. This one is a special edition, which to me is a little bit kitschy for Mercedes. It doesn't seem like their style at all. I thought somebody had gone to Advance Auto Parts and bought those badges, but no. In 05, this was a special edition right from Mercedes-Benz. And what that essentially means is, please God, buy this last year model, because we all know that and everyone else knows that a new model is coming out next year, so we still want to sell some of these things. And that's what that's all about. They also updated the alloy wheels. They look pretty good, and did a few bits and pieces here and there. Anyway, let's get inside the hatch. So one thing that this vehicle did excel at is cargo space. It had more, than most of its competitors. You could also get a third row seat, but it was crappy and stupid, so nobody really did. But when those seats all fold down, this thing had more space inside than a Jeep, than an Explorer, most of its competition, which sort of defied the way that it looked. I mean, by these sort of humped up rear quarters, the sloping hood in the front, which was all very unusual for an SUV, it looked small, it looked compact, but that was very deceiving because in fact it was a fairly large mid-size SUV when compared to the other cars in its class, and that certainly holds true in the interior. There's a ton of room in there. With the seats up, you still get a ton of room. Alert the Catholic Church. The fact that this thing still has its cargo cover is a testament to the fact that it was owned by, sort of 80-year-old people who really didn't use it that much. So those things are mostly long gone. We also have a book set. They give you these little hooky things so you can strap your cargo in. And, one could argue about the fit and finish. I mean, this looks right out of a, Chevy Tahoe or something. But it's, it fits well. It's fine. And, of course, by this generation, they had most of that stuff worked out. But anyway, very, very roomy piece inside. Have a look under the hood. So under the hood, we're going to have a 3.7 liter V6. Now that was new for 2002. Originally this car had a 3.2 liter V6, putting out about 215 horse or so. Very good motor, and the first V6 produced by Mercedes-Benz. This was it. First one. When it first came out, the engineers were kind of bragging that you could rest a coin on its side on top of the motor while it was running and it would stay balanced. I don't know how true that is. I think if we try it on this one, the coin is definitely going to fall. But anyway, it is what it is. It's a terrific motor. They bumped up its displacement for this year. They added some horsepower. We're up into the 230s. Added about 21 foot-pounds of torque, which is, torque is what you want in a full-frame truck like this. You could also get an ML500 in this year. Earlier years, the 430, and that did give you some V8 credibility. But the 350's fine. It does what it needs to do. It's smooth. It's peppy enough. And it did bring about some innovations, this engine. It had 2 spark plugs per cylinder and various other bits of timing stuff and balance shafts that made it smooth, nice, and proper, and ended up being a pretty good engine for this vehicle. The 3.2s and 3.7s currently have a bit of a reputation for being bulletproof, and they've definitely earned that. So that's made it to a very tried and true 5-speed automatic transmission that is also bulletproof. So bulletproof, in fact, in earlier years with the AMG cars, not just in these MLs, but in the S's and E's and such, the 7-speed, they were worried about its ability to handle the torque, so they still use this tough old 5-speed automatic, which handled it well and seems to be bulletproof. See the electric cooling fans there. Everything nice under the hood, proper, no issues at all. I also like the mesh grille, the sort of weird thing. That was, of course, updated in the facelift, and the release is pulling underneath the star, which is kind of cool. Also, these HID headlights were new for that year, as was that attractive looking front bumper. All very nice stuff. Have a look at the back seat. Alright, so this one did have leather. You could get them in a variety of different interiors, like MB Tex or cloth in some cases. Leather is, of course, quite nice. They went to these sort of bunch door panels. You see it's got an airbag thing there. I think it has like 8 airbags. It's got airbags absolutely everywhere, and is finished quite well. Rear leg room, decent. Your Canadians aren't going to be too miserable. They're going to be sitting in there and pretty chipper. What do they get? They get some kind of rear AC control. They got decent cup holders there, and then a true ashtray if they want to start smoking. Gun storage in the back. You got a little pocket here, a little bit big. It might flop around a little bit. You want to get a fat gun, and a couple of pockets here so you can stick more stuff there. So gun storage, adequate enough. The special edition also used this kind of interesting beechwood looking stuff that really wasn't around in other MLs before it. Also the chrome door handle tops. Up front, all very nice and proper. You've got a couple of leather seats, very supportive. The camera always makes it look washed out and crappy. It's a lot richer looking than what I'm seeing in the view screen. Looks all kind of washed out here. Let me back up and see if I can make it kick on with the right color. I can't. Maybe there it is. Anyway, decent fit and finish, but definitely not what people were expecting from Mercedes-Benz in this era. I mean, you have to understand, they're coming off the 124 cars, the 126 cars, you know, the 140 cars. All of a sudden, you've got this door panel, which looks like it could have come from Volkswagen, with the exception of the big bunched leather here and a little taste of wood. And that was an example of Mercedes modernizing, which worked very, very well for the company in terms of sales and profit, but was not a beloved feature for the guys who had been Mercedes enthusiasts for many years. See a big Bose speaker down there. It's got power seats. Yeah, it's all fine. Let's hop in. And again, you know, this facelifted version addressed many of the quality control issues that people didn't like about the original cars, the sort of ill-fitting panels and stuff that seemed to break. You know, that wasn't the case with this one. They did up their game a little bit and made it less obnoxious. But I like the early MLs. I mean, I don't care about the little bit of fit and finish thing. Again, they're true body-on-frame trucks with low range and great off-road cred. And I think that's cool, and it means something to me. These cup holders, I kind of like them and don't like them. I mean, they're very wispy. They don't feel like Mercedes quality. They won't hold much more than like a 12-ounce can. But they're also nicely placed, and, you know, I kind of like the innovation of putting them where they're at in this otherwise fairly wasted space. That's where Mercedes light control used to go. Now it's over here on the stalk off the steering column, a little bit too close to the cruise control stalk. So sometimes you put the thing, you know, you're hitting the turn signal, you can hit this thing, all of a sudden you're, you know, hitting the cruise control in a residential neighborhood and accelerating towards a stop sign when you're not expecting it. Let's get a little AC going here. But anyway, it's mostly fine. Over here you've got your wiper stalk, and again, it just didn't feel up to the standard Mercedes quality of the time. You've got a very simple and you know, very proper instrument cluster. You got your water temp, your fuel, your outside temp, your odometer. You see 101 on this thing. That could be frightening on some vehicles. I swear you put 300,000 on these trucks, so it's got a lot of life left in it. The clock, you've got your PRNDL indicator. The fact that all those pixels are perfect tells me somebody probably maintained this, because those are famous for dropping out. You know, your temperature will read like E7 or something, and it looks weird, and, you know, you have to pull the cluster, send it out at fair expense, and get it done. So I think somebody did that with this. Only thing that makes sense. Does have a manual adjust steering column, in, out, and I'm sure forward and back, but nobody's done it for a while, and I'm not going to pull it one-handed. But anyway, very nice and adjustable. Over here we have Mercedes-Benz command unit. That had updated to a DVD-style navigation unit this year. Has a big flip-down thing here where you can put in a CD or cassette behind it. If you try to drive around with this thing down, it beeps at you. It gets very angry. I presume they think a baby's going to be decapitated or something if you know, you get in an accident while that's horizontal. But anyway, you can go through the different stuff. Your radio, tape deck, CD. I doubt it has satellite. And a satellite receiver, you could probably update it. And direct access buttons. It was a nice command unit. I actually liked this command unit better than the ones that came out in the comparative E's and S's of the time. You've got a very simple automatic climate control there, 3 dials. This will run the weird little windows at the back. Let's see if I can show you that. Yeah, there they go, venting out. No controls back there, but you got them here, and you can vent the cabin that way. This runs the rear wiper. This is the electronic stability program, the traction control that helps this thing be actually a pretty damn good off-roader. You can see it has a low-range button here, so to get into that, we just have it in drive. I'm going to stop, press that. You see it flashes. I think maybe we have to be in park. Hold on a second, let's see. Yeah, flashes lower now, that's not it. Alright, how the hell do you go in low range in this thing? Maybe it's neutral, hold on, let's see. There we go. All right. So it flashes low range for a minute. You got to be in neutral. Now we have a true tall low range in this thing. You can hear the torque there, so you can tow a house down in this setting. To get rid of that, put it back in neutral. Tap the low range. But you know, that was part of the thing in this generation that was missing in the future ones, and that was true off-roading capability. It has 3 differentials. It doesn't have lockers per se, but it has this braking system that will brake them accordingly and throw power only to the wheel that has traction. So if you've got, I'm going to defrost on for a minute. Detailer gets a D+ on this one. I mean, it's a crappy detail. Window looks like hell. Anyway, there, it's nice and clean. So, you know, a true truck with off-road capability. So the lockers on the 3 differentials, let's say you're, you know, in the mud, you know, there's a zombie apocalypse at Whole Foods. So for the first time in your life, you have to drive off-road. All of a sudden, you're hung up on a rock on the front. You got mud on the back. You got one wheel getting traction. Well, this car will make sure that wheel gets all the engine torque and keeps the car rolling. This did use a rack and pinion steering system, different from traditional Mercedes with the recirculating ball. It gets a lot of flack for having poor steering feel. Doesn't really auto pull back that much, so when you take a left turn, you kind of got to help it back to the center, and that is mostly true. I mean, the steering feel is a bit numb in the car when you're dead center just going down the highway, but once you start turning it, the steering actually becomes pretty good. So it's kind of a mixed bag with that one. Look at this up here. You got what is this? Must be a compass or something. I don't know how we turn it on. I'm sure it can be turned on. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You got a standard mirror that's not self-dimming. It has a little flapper there, and you get a nice big power sunroof up there. Look at that, more airbags. Thing has airbags everywhere. Anyway, so where were we? So the thing is a really capable off-road machine, which was, you know, kind of required at the time for SUVs and utterly useless. Like, I'd love to see my sister take her SUV off-road. It would be the most hilarious thing to watch and film. It's just not something that's generally going to happen. But it was nice, or is nice, to know that it could happen. Oh, that guy doing wheelies. God bless him, having fun on the commute. Anyway, it was nice to know that it had that capability, but by the time 06 and the next generation came along, the pretense was up. I mean, nobody could even pretend anymore. There was just no point putting all these off-road features in the car. There was no point building a body-on-frame truck that had good tow capacity and the ability to withstand off-road punishment. It just simply became transport for soccer moms looking to compete with their friends and neighbors. And this wasn't, which is one of the reasons that I like it, because like the old 4Runners, it has true off-road credibility. You really could get yourself out of problems with it. Now, going down the road, you know, it probably was the best in its class in terms of suspension and on-road handling. And that's because of the, not just the electronic systems, but the independent suspension, the amount of money and time Mercedes put into the driving dynamics. It handles well, it brakes well, and it feels nice on the highway. Your 4Runners and Jeeps didn't always do quite as well as that. So that was another reason people kind of liked these things, is they had good manners. Better than most full-frame SUVs at the time. Also, you get virtually no view of the hood at all. I mean, when you're sitting here, that thing is so sloped down. All you've got is a windshield. You might as well be in one of those old Mitsubishi Fuso vans or something. But there is a hood up there, just kind of hard to see. So anyway, there it is. First generation Mercedes-Benz ML350, the W163 platform, true body-on-frame construction with low range. That went missing in later models. A true truck. With four-wheel independent suspension, a decent tow capacity, a pretty smooth V6, bulletproof automatic, and a great all-wheel drive off-road system. And that's why they sold. They sold a ton of them, even if they were kind of expensive as time went on. People loved them, you know, as much for what they could accomplish as for the star in the grill, although I think the star probably was what drove it. You know, that got replaced. Everything went unibody because the Lexus RX became so successful, and basically faux SUVs. But this original ML, despite its quality control issues, which, you know, they tried to address over the year, and you know, some other issues, is a true American-built, you know, body-on-frame off-road truck that's pretty friggin' reliable, and that's why I kind of like them, and why I always recommend people looking for a cheap car. Could do a lot worse than this one. Anyway, if you have an interest in this one, it is for sale on our site, aenaples.com. Really appreciate you having a look, and we will see you with something else tomorrow. Take care.